Hey everybody, it's your old pal Uncle Phil coming at you with a little item for the playlist. Um, so I was reading this book called Faith Unraveled by Rachel Held Evans. I know I'm late to the party. Anyhow, she has this the great line in it. It's her experience is not dissimilar to mine. As someone who grew up in a very specific religious context, struggling a little with that context, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And how do you do that? Anyhow, it was a good read. My wife had been telling me to read it for a long time, but I just finally got around to it. Anyhow, she had a line in here that just, I'm looking over my iPad. She had a line in here that was absolutely just hit me between the eyes and said, you can tell a lot about someone based on who they fear might tear them to pieces. You can tell a lot about someone based on who they fear might tear them to pieces. Man, here's what's funny about that. That statement is so on point, but it also is funny. Maybe not funny, haha, funny like a tumor. It's funny to me because the people I fear most come from the very group that I've been a part of my whole life. And that is, I was going to say Christians. And then I was going to say, no, conservative Christians. And I realized, no, it's not just conservative, because I've had progressive liberal Christians do the same thing. And then I realized what it is I'm afraid of is sanctimonious Christians. That's who I'm most afraid of, is the sanctimonious. And then I went, oh, shit, Phil, that's who was walking around giving Jesus a hard time. Not that I'm comparing myself to Jesus, but just saying, who was walking around giving, the sanctimonious religious people, the Pharisees. They were walking around giving him a hard time. And I just thought, oh man, nothing changes. Nothing changes. The people I'm afraid will tear me to pieces are sanctimonious people. People who are sure they're right. I'm allergic to certainty, man. People who are really certain they're right, people who are so certain they're right that they can condemn other people. Wow, that's putting you in a class with God. I'd rather leave the condemnation to God. How about that? I'm just going to leave that to his business. You know what? I'm not in management. That's not my deal. I'm going to leave that to the boss. I find it fascinating that we walk around judging so cavalierly. And I know, I've read the Bible, I've studied it, I went to seminary, I was a pastor. I know that people are like, now remember, when it says judge not lest you are judged, and in the same way that you judge, you'll be judged, is not a total condemnation of judging. It simply means you need to be above reproach. Well, congratulations. Are you above reproach? Are you? I'm not. That's scary business. I don't want to jump on the judgment train, because let me tell you, man, I know how that works. The standard you judge with is the standard you'll be judged by. If that's true, then I want to, you know what I want to do? I want to be very gracious. That's what I want to do. If the standard by which I'm judged is the same one I use on people, then I want to be very gracious with people, because I'd like very gracious to be the method by which I'm evaluated, because I need some grace. So I'm just telling you, man, yeah, those people scare me to death. The ones who know they're right, who are sure they're right, who are sure their theology, their interpretations, their way of doing the church and everything, they're sure that's right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have my beliefs. I have areas where I feel fairly strongly, but if you want me to say that I know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, incontrovertibly, that I'm right, nope, won't say that. Won't say it. That's some dangerous business right there. But the bottom line is that I got to get these people out of my head, because I've lived in fear of them my whole life, because I grew up surrounded by them. They were my fellow church members. They were my Sunday school teachers, my youth leaders, my pastors, my professors in seminary. Like, not all of them, by the way, not all. There were so many delightful people. I would say the delightful people outweighed the sanctimonious, judgmental people. But I was part of a system that was built around that sanctimonious, judgmental attitude. We were sure we were right. Our understanding of everything, Bible, theology, everything was correct. And everybody else was, somewhere between a little astray to, an evil cult. That's kind of how how we rolled. But the arrogance is really shocking sometimes. Anyhow, bottom line is this, it's really plagued my whole life. And I think it has plagued me. Sometimes it isn't even a real person plaguing me. It's just an idea, right? It's, that thought. It's like the idea that you could get in trouble. It's like, how if you think if you see a cop, even if you're not speeding, you pump the brakes because you're like, oh, I wasn't doing anything wrong. But that's a metaphor for my entire spiritual life. I say my entire, for much of my spiritual life was I was always pumping the brakes. And I was telling my wife how I started a novel when I was much younger, college age. I was telling my wife about how I started this thing and I got about 100 and some pages into it. And part of it was the plot, I was trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. But the other thing that I wrestled with the whole time was, am I allowed to do this? And if it doesn't have like a spiritual message, if it isn't converting someone, if it isn't, if it doesn't have some didactic moral message, moral pointing towards the true, correct Christian faith, of which, of course, we were the only ones holding that. Like if it didn't have that, then somehow was I wasting my efforts and energies and not serving God properly. And so I just abandoned the book. And my wife was on the verge of tears. Like, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. She said, you had an idea for a book, you got halfway through it, and then you bailed out because you weren't sure it was godly enough. And it wasn't like I was writing like smut. I wasn't sure that it was going to be okay. I think what I was projecting was, were there going to be people who were like disappointed in me, who are going to say, oh, I'm so disappointed that you wrote that's not, you're just going to be a writer who writes thriller novels and you're not going to do anything for the kingdom. Yeah. So yeah, they were in my head for most of my life. Even if they weren't in front of me, they were there. And I got to figure that it was like that for the people in the first century when the Pharisees were walking around. You got to imagine that, like, Jesus' disciples who were, ragtag group, right? You got fishermen and tax collector over here, and they probably saw those guys, coming and were like, oh shit, here they come. We're in trouble now. Like, what a sad commentary that the supposedly most religious people, that your first reaction is going to be, oh no, we're in trouble now. Not, oh, we're going to get a word of encouragement and grace and love and the good news of the gospel. No, we're in trouble now. Anyhow, yeah, I got to figure out how to be done with it. So the song today for the playlist is a gem. And it's funny, I don't hear it played as much in his greatest hits, even though I would argue that in some ways the drums are maybe better than Coming in the Air Tonight. Yes, this is a Phil Collins song called I Don't Care Anymore. It's such a good one. It's a banger, man. It'll get your blood boiling. Like if you're a person who like needs music to amp you up when you're working out or something. I don't know. I don't need amping up during workouts, mainly because I don't do workouts. But when you're just walking, you don't really need to get amped up for walking the dog. But yeah, it's that kind of song. It's like it doesn't have, I say, the drums. This is going to be controversial. Not that anyone's going to watch this, but consistently on the drums and the way it ends on the drums, I think, yeah, it doesn't have the beat drop kind of thing on the middle section, the build to the big ba-bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. I understand that's iconic, but I don't know. I think this one might have more of a drive through it. Anyhow, it's a great song. I Don't Care Anymore. It maybe has a little more anger than I've got. I'm not picking that song. I'm trying hard, in fact, not to have anger. I have some friends who have similar backgrounds to me, and they are very angry at the church, at God, at Christians, at religion, they're angry, man. They're not in there. And I'm really trying hard to stay away from the old anger hot tub, you know, because once you get in that hot tub, it feels good for a minute, but then you realize you're kind of wrinkly and lightheaded, and maybe you should have gotten out 30 minutes ago, and now you're going to pass out in the tub and maybe drown in it. That was very specific sort of hot tub metaphor, but you get the idea. Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from the anger hot tub because I don't think it's profitable. I don't think it does me any good. I'm trying to reduce cortisol and inflammation in my life and blood pressure, and trying to reduce those things. And so anger doesn't do me any good in that neighborhood. Besides, all the people that I could be angry at, they had the same Stockholm syndrome I did. They were just in many cases as captive to an idea and as scared as I was. So yelling at them, it doesn't do me any good. But I say that to say the Phil Collins song is rather aggressive, and I don't really feel that level of aggression. But it's a good anthem to remind me not to care anymore about the sanctimonious naysayers. Enough. You're done. You're done. You're out. I'm finished. So there you go. That's the song for the day. I think it's off. Which album is it off of? Face Value. Hello, I Must Be Going. I don't know. It's one of the ones with his face on the front. You get the joke there, right? Like his face is on the front of all of his albums, I think. Or at least it was in the like 80s and 90s. Yeah, you'll find it. I don't care anymore. It's on the playlist. You can always go to Spotify or Apple Music and catch the Uncle Phil playlist. I put links in the notes below. It's a real playlist. It really is my brain in music. But yeah, that's it for today. As always, remember, Jesus loves you. And I wish grace, peace, and love to everyone.